lecturing. We're gonna hopefully get to chat a little bit as far as kind of expectations and then some of the things I'm gonna have you guys working on throughout the semester. Please, please, please feel free to throw up questions anytime you have them. As you see me looking around, I'd run a double monitor system so I can have one that's just showing me what's going on with you guys as far as what's in the chat, and then same thing with what's going on with who all's trying to make it into lecture. And I imagine we're gonna have a couple folks rolling in a little late, and that's okay. Obviously, I appreciate you guys reading the email and seeing the Zoom link, and who knows, maybe where some folks are at, they don't even have internet that works today. So we're just running it. Can you guys see the screen share? You can see the syllabus. Is that coming up okay for you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So hi, I'm Mike Lane. I'm going to be the person who's going to be teaching this course. You guys have hopefully had anatomy and physiology 1 and 2. It's obviously it's a combined class now, the 307, 308. Before you're getting in here, it's going to make things a whole lot easier when we're going through the anatomical landmarks. You guys were given, I believe, the most recent texts. I've got this wonderful little attachment that is one of the older texts. The key thing is what they do is the basics of biomechanics hasn't changed. What it is they make a slightly new edition with maybe a couple new prettier pictures and then charge you guys like $50 to $100 more, and I don't like that. So hence yeah, feel free to find whatever edition. The chapters might not link up perfectly, but you'll hopefully understand through context clues of the lectures of what's going on. Now, we've got our wonderful student learning outcomes, all the different things you're going to be learning. I'm not going to insult your intelligence by reading them to you. Take your time, go on through it. I promise we're going to be touching on all of them. And this class is going to be challenging. There's a lot of information that we're going to cover, and notice it's a lot of application of knowledge, and that obviously makes things a little bit more challenging. Now, when it comes to the evaluation, essentially a big part of it is your exams. We're going to have 3 of them. You're going to take the exam first as an individual, and then you're going to take it in your group. And we're going to get into how we're going to break down those groups today, but we're not going to set anything in stone because we are, as of this count now, missing at least 6 other students. So you also each week are going to have quizzes that you're going to take both as an individual and then take it again as a group. And then you guys are going to be having a group project. Now, the way that we format the group project here, it's going to be over an exercise of your choice. You're going to be in charge of breaking down just your joint of interest. So let's say you and your group decides you're going to go ahead and do the barbell snatch. So one person would do the shoulder, one person would do the hip, one person would do the low back, one person would do the knee, one person would do the ankle. So each of you guys are going to be in charge of your own joint. And so you're graded on your work you do. It's actually really friendly as a way to set it up that you don't feel like people are trying to take advantage of you and the hard work you do on your project. Now, there's going to be a lot of homework assignments. There's vocab assignments and then lab reports. We're going to try to work on those labs in class, but you're going to be open to doing those outside of class. A lot of those are just going to require basic equipment that's either in my lab, which is Moberly 223, right next to where we lecture. And some of those pieces you can take with you. And so with those homework quizzes and the vocab quizzes, you can take them as many times as you want and only record your highest grade. So that's the thing that I suggest all you guys game as much as you can to go ahead and effectively give yourself some padding on your grade in the class. Now, the math quiz that's up on Blackboard, it is due this week. So get up there. There's 4 different quizzes. They increase in intensity, but it's just as kind of a little quick crash course, remembering in the basics of multiplication, division, subtraction, order of operations, and things along those lines. Then we've got some extra credit, and then I've got my wonderful, it's on the syllabus or it's announced in class policy, which is if it's just more or less a way that I can minimize how many, how to say, emails that I get where I've already talked about it or it's in the syllabus, and it's just something to save my sanity. So grading scale, I don't round. So if you got an 89.99999, congratulations on having an ultra B. It's still not an A. There are going to be a lot of opportunities you guys have to get a little bit more points if you're having trouble with regular credit. So if you have questions, you can see the things in our Blackboard, but otherwise we can talk about it. So student progress, you're gonna be able to see all your grades on Blackboard. Keep in mind, it doesn't give you a 0 for assignments, quizzes that you don't do. So I have to go in and manually do that. And that's where people will have some acute posterior inflammation because they'll look at their grade one day and be like, oh, I got like an 80-something%. And then I fill in the zeros for however many assignments they haven't done. And like, now I have an F. It's like, yeah, because you didn't do the work. So do keep in mind that is a thing. Now, when it comes to the attendance policy, key thing is you don't want to miss more than 20% of my class. My class is hard. If you're missing more than 20% of it, you're probably not doing well in it in the first place. But you need to make sure stuff's going to happen. We're still living through a wonderful pandemic, and wonderful is not the term that I'd use most of the time. So, if you got a quarantine, otherwise, I'm going to try to Zoom the lectures even when I'm giving them in mobilely. So if you guys need to take it from home because of exposures and just preemptive quarantining, I am absolutely okay with that. I'd rather you guys use an ounce prevention than having to be on a ventilator. So cell phone policy, if I catch you just playing on your phone, it's a decrease in your grade of final percent or 5% in the final of class. Now, mind you, if you take notes on your phone, obviously you're going to put things in your calendar, things along those lines, it's fine. But if I just catch you texting, and it's really awkward when you see students just like smiling while staring at their crotch in the middle of your class, you kind of have questions. So just please don't do that. Now, if your cell phone ringer goes off, and it's not because you warned me that you're going to expect a phone call for something important, otherwise, you have two options at that point. One, you take an immediate 10% deduction on your final grade in the class, meaning before you had a chance of getting up to 100% of class. Now, congratulations, the highest grade you can get in this class is a 90. And that's if you miss no points the entire semester. Good luck. Or you're going to bring a healthy snack. And since it's going to be a 9:30 in the morning class, coffee, I'm more of a tea drinker, but you guys can do something along those lines as a, please don't do that again. So we've got our start date, last day of class, and then final. A lot of these exams, I'm just going to make them take home, so you've got more time to work, especially with more complicated math. If you have anything that requires obviously some extra time on tests, etc., just make sure that I get that documentation sooner than later. If you show up late to class, you get to immediately hop into a bear crawl. That's going to be on all fours, so crawling along the floor, and then from there flip over into a crab walk, and you get to crab walk all the way to the closest empty chair by me when we are all in person. Folks, obviously I can't really enforce that over the internet, and that's just weird. So we're just trying to make things work, guys. Stuff's going to happen. It's 9:30 in the morning. Weather's bad, something else. Please explain yourselves. But if you're just showing up late because you got beat by the clock, then that's a different story entirely. So please don't cheat. Please don't cheat. If you think that it's better to cheat off your classmates, don't. I give you the opportunity to take things as a group anyway, so let's please not do that. It's just a real pain for everybody, because if I catch you cheating, then I got to report you cheating, and when I report you cheating, then I have to wait for them to let me know if you've cheated before, and then I have to show all my documentation. Then if you decide that you don't think that you cheated, then we have to go to an unhappy meeting with the Academic Integrity Council, and please don't cheat. The non-discrimination, harassment, Title IX, and prevention statement. Don't be a jerk. Just stuff's going to happen. We're already going through a lot of stuff. Let's not pile on anybody. If you guys see something, say something. If you say something to me, I got to report it. So do keep that in mind as things are going on through. But yeah, don't be a jerk. So course outline, we're going to be lecturing. We're going to be discussing these topics. We're going to have you guys working in groups when we are all physically in the same place. And actually, it looks like now we're only missing 2 students. So we can try to do a little bit more planning on the groups, or at least try to get the basics of that set up in a few moments. And so hence I will assign teams the first week of class, and you'll work with that group throughout the semester. So this is going to be how you're going to be working on through doing your labs, your group quizzes, and then obviously your group projects. So get ready to either really like or really dislike each other by the end of the semester. The key thing is, remember, on your group project, you're graded on your performance, not other folks. So then we have our wonderful course outline. So AKA this first week, we're going through chapters 1, 2, and 3 in both Burkett and Hall. And then we're going to go ahead and move into just Burkett, where we're going through motion, linear specifically. You can see the different homeworks and quizzes that are going to be essentially beyond just what you have to do as far as your other homework quizzes and so on. And from there, we're going to hopefully stick with this plan throughout the entirety of the semester. Things get bumped back, they bump back. If things get bumped forward, they get bumped forward. We're going to cover the information at the rate at which you guys feel comfortable. I really don't like talking to myself for an hour and 15 minutes. So if you have questions, comments, concerns, put up something in the chat, unmute yourself, anything along those lines, guys. The idea is so that there's a give and take, not just me ranting at you for an hour and 15 minutes. That sounds miserable for all of us. Now, you're going to have to do that reading in the book. Okay, you got to go through there. You got to make sure you look at the labs and watch videos that are associated with them. So that way you are prepared for what we're going to go ahead and do in class. Obviously, I'd really hope that you guys participate, because that's going to make things easier for us. You know when the exams are going to be, as far as the week they're going to be, they're typically going to be on the Thursday of that week. Tuesday on occasion, if we manage to go really fast. And a lot of them are going to be, like I said, take home. I'm gonna have you guys take it as an individual in class, and then you guys can go take it as a group somewhere else. Or there's going to be certain exams where you do the in-person, which is going to be the multiple choice, kind of more, basic understanding concepts. But then the math section, take home, have fun. Well, have however much fun you can with that section. And we'll have you go ahead and get that opportunity to obviously do well. And then quizzes, same thing. Some will be in class. Some I'm just going to let you guys take before class. Some you'll take after class. We will discuss what's going on. We've got the wonderful team project where you're going to be breaking down a movement and everything that comes into it, and how that joint is going to be, what muscles are producing force, what is going to be the velocity, so the speed at which it changes, the acceleration, how quickly it gets to that speed, the torque in theory that that muscle had to produce on the joint in order for it to get to move at that speed. All of these things are going to be something that you're going to present, and we're going to look at the difference between an amateur doing a movement and an expert doing a movement. So you have to do this on your own. We've got information on the labs, more information on the math, and then here's the fun one that I added for the pandemic. Every nostril I count is 5 points off your final grade. My wife is being treated for cancer. Her immune system is not great. It's pretty bad. In fact, there's actually recent literature showing that 13% of people undergoing cancer treatments who become infected with COVID while vaccinated die. So I really like teaching, and I want to see you guys in person, and I want us to, do our best to make sure that you guys are going to understand this information and be able to apply it going forward. But obviously, we don't have a lot of things we can't control. The things we can is we can wear masks, try to make good choices, and then get vaccinated. And the only one that I can control while we're in class is we're wearing our masks. So as long as that mask mandate is still on campus, I don't want to see your nostrils. Keep those dirty things away. So, and then we have the wonderful, it's in the syllabus or announcing class policy. If we've already gone through it, it's already up there, and I'm just being bothered with it. Like I said, congratulations, you just subtracted from your grade, because I need something to help me rationalize having to say things 8 times in a row. My office, I am going to be typically in Moberly 223 when I'm not at home. Office phone, go for it. Since they upgraded our phones, mine doesn't really work. Our admin, I got to update that. That is no longer Shane Harris. That is now Deborah Sparks. So let me go and plop that on over. And email, guys, hands down, is the fastest way to get a hold of me. I tend to check that 2 to 3 times a day. And obviously just feel free to swing by the office. Noon is my actual typical office hour. It's actually, today will be more closer to 12:30, but obviously I'm not in the office, so that's weird. The YouTube is where you're going to find different previous recorded lectures and current recorded lectures, as well as you're going to be able to find walk through the labs and just other random stuff I have up there. Yeah, if you're really bored, you can read that. You don't need to. So extra credit, you can do this up to 20 points by filling out the form. It's on Blackboard as well, breaking down the physics of some type of ridiculous breaking of physics in movies, TV shows. That's why I think superhero movies are usually kind of some of the best options to do. We're actually going to use examples from that in class, but feel free to go ahead and break down things to the best of your ability. It's just more or less thought exercises. I have a Discord that's up, guys. You can obviously follow this link yourself. From there, you're going to be able to go ahead and, I try to check the Discord about once, probably only really, let's be honest, about 3 times a week, but ask questions if you're struggling with something otherwise. And just one question that people put up, you'll see the biomechanics class questions. Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer that by writing a mediocre blog post or just recording a short video. And if yours was the one I picked, congratulations, you just got 5 points of extra credit. Because I don't know, I think that might be fun for us. We'll find out. And then doing a little research study looking at the effects of just overall stress on academic performance. So that's the link to the Google form. The idea is it's a survey that you fill out every week, and if you can, every day would be cool. And effectively, you pick a fake name, you just use the same fake name the entire time. So, whatever you're a big fan of or otherwise, you throw that up there, and then from there, you just follow that out throughout the rest of the semester. All right, we're getting to the end of the syllabus. Does anybody have any questions before we do a very mediocre attempt at getting to know you guys? All right, looks like I am talking to myself. So I'm going to hit pause recording. So with the movements that you guys are going to pick, today we're just going to kind of get our short list of them. We're not going to have you kind of sign your name on the dotted line that we're doing this movement for sure or that movement for sure. That's something we're going to hash out in person. So you guys can kind of talk to each other, but for now we're going to kind of spitball. So you guys can go ahead and put it in the chat or you can unmute yourself. So think about a sport movement that you're interested in. So to give you some ideas, and this is not what you need to do, previous classes, I've had folks do a barbell muscle up. I've had folks do a standing backflip. So there's your cheerleading reference. I've had folks do the power clean. I've had folks do swinging a baseball bat and doing a volleyball spike. So the idea is we want you to pick some type of movement, preferably total body. Like we don't want to just look at like professional arm wrestling and like, yeah, you turn in, that's about it. But something that's dynamic, something where we should see a considerable difference in skill between an amateur and an expert. So think about somebody that knows how to throw a ball and then somebody that doesn't know how to throw a ball. Like we're going to see some major differences in the order of how they get those muscles to contract, the degrees of motion, so on and so forth. So whenever you're ready, unmute yourself or go ahead and put up in the chat exercise that you might be interested in. We want to probably come up with about 5 or 6 of them.
I could do a high jump.
Okay, there you go. High jump would be one of them. That's definitely involved. And when we come to, you're going to be videoing these movements from the front, from the side, and then preferably from overhead. We want to make sure we have very appropriate safety equipment whenever we're going to have you guys doing that. Yes, now we're talking about shooting a bow. We're talking about shooting a gun. We're talking about
basketball.
There we go. Okay, what type of shot?
Like a 3-point jump shot.
Okay, sounds good. In a perfect world, yes, Elizabeth. Okay. And it's okay, guys. Keep throwing out ideas that you're interested in.
So is this going to be for the group project or?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So, okay. And guys, just give it 1 or 2 more. We're not going to vote on today, but we're going to kind of talk through it a little bit more as kind of how things would go. Okay. Any other ideas you guys have? Are you pretty happy with the short list we have of these 6? And if you're looking at this and you're like, I have no interest in any of them, that's fine. Throw out an idea that you are interested in. Oh yeah, we've also had folks do, oh God, I can't remember the name of the movement anymore. Plie, I think is what it is. We had folks do a ballet movement, which was really, it was interesting because one of our students who was the expert, she teaches and actually danced professionally for like over a decade. And then we had one of the other students they tried real hard, folks. They tried. Okay, pitching a baseball. Good. Now, so let's kind of talk through this again so we have these expectations. When we're doing this movement, the key thing is you're only going to focus on your one joint when you're doing your paper, when you're doing your project. So let's say, for example, just because I can see the names here, all of the folks that I can see right now are going to do throwing a football. So Elizabeth would be in charge of what you do with the wrist and the hand. So obviously holding the football and then making sure you release it correctly. David would be doing the elbow. So how, when we scoot back and make sure I don't step on the dog bed, when we're going, the windup, so we're cocking back, the force producing, and then the follow through, he's going to break down the angles the elbow is going through. Somer is going to look at the shoulder. Katie is going to look at the torso and how that's turning and rotating with the throw. Haley is going to be looking at the hips and how the hips are going to they're going to externally and internally rotate appropriately, as well as move. Obviously, you can't see what I'm doing with my legs. And then Haley would be doing how the knees are going to change angles and move. And then Nathan would be doing the feet, or essentially the ankles. Does that make sense of how we're going to break that down?
Yes.
Awesome. So when we come in on Thursday, we're going to vote on these. We might have one group that's only 2 people. We might have another group that's made up of 4. The goal is about 3 people per group. So you can really pick the joints that are really interesting because, so go back to throwing the football. The shoulder is really interesting. There's a lot going on there. The elbow, a little bit, but like the ankles, there's not a whole lot going on. That's not really that interesting. So we want you guys to focus on obviously your joint, but making sure that you have a joint that's got more going on. Also, if the standing tuck is chosen, make sure that whenever we have somebody perform it, we only want people that are going to perform it that aren't going to, they're not going to land on their head. So I still know some of the folks on the cheerleading team. I used to help out a lot more. That was my sport in college. And we can hopefully get you guys in contact so you have somebody that can demonstrate it. So any questions about the movement you guys are going to do? And then blank pages. You guys feel good, ready for a little bit of fun lecturing? Maybe it's fun. I don't know. Well, seeing as how I got the resounding silence of the class, we're going to go through the basic slides. We'll probably run through most of these today. Please ask questions, and you can always unmute yourself, as well as you can always go ahead and just put something up into the chat. So what is biomechanics? It is the unholy love child of life and movement. When we put those two together, congratulations, you have the interaction of the human body with physics. So we're really looking at forces that we're having to deal with, which are going to come in a variety of different forms. Now, biomechanics comes in a number of types of flavors, okay? First up, we have statics. That is something that is in a constant state, okay? So hence, if you're laying on the ground, you are in a static position. If you are running, okay, you are in that constant motion position. So we're looking at consistent outputs and then what's going on with force and so on going through there. Dynamics is going to be acceleration. Now, what is acceleration, guys? Anybody want to try to use their own definition of it?
Would it be going from being completely still to high velocity?
Yes, and the opposite, absolutely. Acceleration is change in speed. And when we say speed, we're really referring to in this class is what's known as velocity. So hence, let's take, for example, I know Nathan used to play football here, and obviously, Summer, what's your event, track and field?
The 200 and 400.
200 and 400. Okay. So if we had the two of them sprint against each other, there's a chance that Nathan might be faster than Somer in something like a 40-yard dash. Okay. Now, no offense, Nathan, I don't think you're going to be able to keep up with Somer for a 400 meter, just because 400 meters are incredibly awful, and you're a pretty solidly built dude. So the key thing is, when you're looking at somebody's like 40-yard sprint or their 10-yard sprint, we're looking at really acceleration. How quickly can they get up to speed? But Somer, when we're looking at something like a 400 meter, what are we really looking at more with that person?
I'd say like their stride length more.
Pain tolerance?
No, their stride length.
Oh, I know, but I said it's 400 meters, so I think that's pain tolerance as well.
Oh yeah.
Because how many times have you done a race where a gal came out of the blocks pretty fast, but they couldn't keep it up for all 400 meters?
Yeah.
So, but you know, you're right. Stride length, stride frequency is how fast you're going. That is absolutely correct. However, okay, so how important is your start to your 400 meter time?
It's very important. It's probably the
Good.
most important thing.
Okay, how important is the start for somebody running the 15,000 meter or
Not that
10,000?
important.
Yeah, but where you look at the start for something like a 100, or like, is it 60 meters for the indoor?
Yes.
Where it's like, if you mess up the start, you might as well not even run, right?
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, so once again, looking at acceleration. So thank you. I'm going to be picking on, no offense, folks that I know your athletic background, because you guys have lived this stuff, but now we're going to add numbers to it, which can be a little unintuitive, and that's okay. So kinematics is the appearance or the description of motion. This is what you're going to be doing with your movement. So kind of what muscles are contracting, what joints are changing their angle, changing direction, etc., how we're going through. And the last one, which is my personal favorite, which is kinetics, and that's how much force we happen to be dealing with. So this is going to be anything that's pushing or pulling on the body. So as a thought exercise, guys, right now, when it comes to forces on your body, okay, where do you currently have force that effectively is pushing things together? This is what's known as compression. Where do you have compression right now in your body?
Your joints.
Yes, in a number of them. Which joints? It's okay, Elizabeth, come back.
I guess wherever your body is positioned is going to determine what joints are going to be affected. Like if I'm standing, obviously my knees and my hips, spine, things like that are going to be affected more.
Absolutely, that's going to be compression. Okay, so now, not necessarily Elizabeth, but somebody else, when you're just standing there, so like me standing here right now, which of my joints are currently have a little bit of tension? So they're currently being pulled apart a little bit when I'm just standing here. If you guys are at home, just stand up, think about if I'm just hanging out, which of my joints are just going through tension? They're just being essentially not necessarily like pulled apart like we're trying to rip somebody in half, but they're naturally being tractioned to a small extent.
Your shoulders.
Yeah, your shoulders, your elbows, your wrists, because the weight of my hands is pulling away from my wrist. The weight of my forearm and my hand is pulling away from my elbow, and the weight of my upper arm, my forearm, and my hand are currently pulling away from my shoulder joint. Now, obviously, if I'm picking up my arms, and especially if I'm lifting anything overhead, now we've got compression going the other direction. So we're going to be, hence, when we talk about kinetics, we're going to be talking about these forces. So when you're sprinting, where are you pushing? What's not your body, but what are you really pushing force into?
The ground.
Exactly. Exactly. And so we are driving that force into the ground. Now, what's the ground doing as a result of the force we're putting into it? Most of the time, not right now with the stuff that's outside.
It's kind of like absorbing it, your emotion to like, I guess, like push you forward or off of it.
Bingo. So when you push hard into the ground and you're running on the track, you're running on asphalt, you're running on turf, and you got spikes on, all the force you're pushing in the ground, well, that's now driving your body forward. But if you did the same thing on the ice that is my road, you're not going to have what's known as friction. You're not going to be able to get any traction. So what's going to happen is you're going to push your foot back real fast. And if you're particularly unlucky, you're going to land flat on your face because, congratulations, you produced that force, which did extend your joint. However, you didn't actually apply it to the ground in a way that the ground returned it to you. Think about how much harder it is to run in sand than it is to run on, once again, a good, track surface. Those are examples of when we're not getting force to be received like we want, or me being ever so smart in my garage. So
I have
Yeah.
a quick question.
yeah, go for it.
So friction is the term you're going to use for the act of the ground absorbing the force and propelling you.
Okay, great. Let's go two parts here. Friction is going to be whenever we have two objects that are potentially sliding along each other. Okay, that's going to be friction. Or in case of rolling friction, rolling along each other. Now, ground reactive forces is the term we're actually going to use of when you drive force into the ground and the ground absorbs that force so you can jump back, or you can jump up into the air or accelerate your body forward. So
That's where I got confused.
it's okay, because we're going to be going through a lot of concepts. So that's why it's really important that we have a good foundation. So friction, again, is two objects going across each other. So for example, I could push off the ground in my office and I guess I would run. Well, I don't run that fast, let's be honest, guys, but I propel my body forward or backwards with, whatever speed, because of in relationship to how much I weigh and how much force I can produce. That's going to be the speed. Now, if I did the same thing, like I said, on the ice, on the streets outside, if I pushed hard, my feet aren't going to get traction, especially because I'm barefoot right now. And so because I don't get traction, I'm still producing that force. So my leg's going to extend, but it's just going to shoot back behind me. And if I really committed with both legs at the same time, I now have my feet behind me and my body in this angle. So I'm just going to splat on the ground. Now, you take Somer, you put her in her spikes and you put her on the blocks. She's in a steep angle on her start, but she's got a great amount of force she's producing relative to her body weight, and B, she's got great traction. She's actually going to propel her body forward, and that's going to be those ground reactive forces. But we're going to get into a lot more nuanced things, guys. So please, 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 always ask questions, because it can get pretty difficult. So kinematics. Here's an example of folks that are doing speed cycling. So we're looking at effectively, size, sequence, and timing of movements. So how are we moving through and doing something that's going to be, once again, constant? So repetitive motion. So we're really looking at the form, the technique that someone's using. So one thing we're going to get into when it comes to biomechanics is the better your technique is, the more efficient you become, which means the less energy, less force you have to produce in the first place to do that given movement, or the better job you have of converting that force over to movement. So, questions? Okay. Now, when it comes to kinetics, we're talking about internal and external forces. Okay. So, who is who's the power lifter that I was talking to earlier? Yeah, so Elizabeth, well, there you go, I'm picking on you again. So whenever you are squatting the 240 pounds, okay, that's the barbell on your back. Now, whenever you're doing a squat, what parts of your body are you having to lift as you go through that movement?
I mean, really, you're not lifting your body, you're pressing against a weight, but I guess the most I could say would be to brace your core.
Oh no, the technique part, that makes sense, but I'm referring to what all parts of your body are you naturally lifting when you're doing a movement like the squat?
I mean, you're extending your legs and torso, keeping your chest up. I mean,
No, it's okay, it's okay. So when you're doing the squat, when you're squatting down, you're squatting back, when you're standing back up, you have to lift the weight of your head, the weight of your arms, the weight of your torso, and the weight of your hips and thighs. Your ankles and your lower leg, your shank, calves, whatever you want to do, you don't actually have to lift that. It's below what's moving through. So, Elizabeth squats 240. I don't know how much she weighs, but we'll go ahead and say instead it's me. So I weigh about 210. And then let's say I could squat 240 pounds. So that means altogether the system mass, like the total weight I'm lifting, is that 210 plus 240, which gives us 450 pounds. Now, if all of a sudden I gained a whole lot of weight and I all of a sudden weighed 450 pounds, well, that's gonna be a maximal effort to stand, to get up out of a chair, because that is the system mass I have to lift. Does that make sense to you guys?
yes.
So hence, when we think about track and field athletes, sprinters, they typically have, and jumpers, they have very strong legs and very powerful bodies, but are they heavy? Are they really heavy?
Not usually, no.
Because that's more internal force you have to overcome, which naturally is going to slow you down. But then you look at the sport of football. Nathan, what was your position when you played?
Running back.
Jesus, you are a thick damn dude for running back. Pardon my language, guys. Now, okay, if you were running the ball and the lineman that was trying to tackle you was 6 feet tall and 140 pounds, are you concerned?
No,
Why not?
because he's a lot smaller than I am.
Yeah, markedly. And then you think about the force that you're producing and the force that person's producing. Now, mind you, if you look across and the lineman who's coming at you is closer to 400 pounds and 6 foot something and actually isn't, well, let's just simply say 400 pounds through the midsection, what's going to be your thought instead in that situation?
It's going to hurt.
Because of, once again, his internal mass compared to your internal mass is quite large. Does that make sense to you guys when we're thinking about forces?
Yes.
So, sport of basketball. How much does a basketball weigh, guys? Got a bunch of people that love basketball that we don't know how much a basketball weighs. Come on, guys.
22 ounces.
Nice. I like how it sounded more like a question than a statement, but I don't know how much a basketball weighs because
Well, I looked it up. I've never actually thought about how much it would weigh. Obviously, it doesn't weigh a lot, but apparently it's 22 ounces is the NBA standard.
There you go. And so if we were to look at a baseball, it's going to be a set weight. Softball, volleyball, soccer ball, like those are uniform, like they're going to have the same weight. So you just need to get better at kicking, throwing, passing, or hitting that object because it's going to have a fixed load. Whereas when we think about sports like football, wrestling, boxing or otherwise, like, well, there's weight classes, well, in some of those sports, but rugby and football, not so much. So you've got to be ready to overcome folks that are much, much larger than you are. So when we're thinking about those forces and how it goes together. So what is kinesiology? Well, it's a wide umbrella that contains a lot of components inside of it. And really what we're talking about is it's the study of human movement. So how we're going through and solving problem. That's all movement is. Movement is just solving a problem. So why do we walk places in a very like just hypothetical situation? Why do you really walk anywhere?
Get to another destination.
Bingo. So, you know, Alice, I know you said you like to go outside and hike and, you know, walk around and obviously ride a bike as well. So when you're walking around, how often do you do that walking on your hands?
Wait, sorry, can you say it again?
Yeah, no worries. How often do you do that walking on your hands?
Never.
Why not?
Or because it's way harder.
Because that is a really bad solution to the problem of how I get from point A to point B. How often do you find yourself just crawling along the sidewalks?
Never.
This is not an indictment of anything you guys might do on the weekends because you've maybe had too many, just so we're clear. But go ahead, Alice. You're not bear crawling around places?
No, not really.
Okay, okay. But when you're going hiking, how often do you just find yourself just sidestepping the entire time as opposed to actually walking forwards?
Never.
So, because the body's trying to find the most efficient solution to any problem you're trying to do. And so that's why when people first pick up and try to throw a ball, you see the wildest technique because they've never had to solve the problem before. It's the equivalent of asking you guys to do advanced calculus and you've never learned calculus. You're going to try something, but then through trial and error, instruction, otherwise, we're going to learn probably what is the most efficient way to solve the problem. Now, what's the most efficient way to solve the problem is not always the safest way to solve the problem, which brings us to the next slide, which is sports medicine, where we're talking about the clinical and scientific aspects of both exercise and sport. So when it comes to athletic training, and this is not to be, we're never blaming folks because they got injured. Sometimes you got injured because, you know, football player, they tore their ACL. What happened? A 300-pound lineman fell on their knee explodes. Physics is a harsh mistress. And then you have examples, if you don't mind sharing, Katie, what happened to your knee?
I was going to kick the ball, and when I stepped, I think my hips came around and my knee kind of went out like sideways.
So that sounds incredibly unpleasant, and I'm glad that you're obviously on the mend. Now, the easiest solution for that to not have happened is just to not play soccer, right?
Yep.
Okay, so that's not an option because you like playing your sport, you're an athlete and you compete. Now, when that happened, was that at the beginning of practice or more like at the end of practice?
It was towards the beginning.
Was this the beginning of your season or was this kind of middle of the season, end of the season?
It was like right in the middle of the spring semester.
Okay. So when things like that happen, it's more of a function of, you know, go figure, physics happen. I know some of your teammates have had, you know, landing ACL tears. I know some folks have had, you know, got slide tackle or their cleat, you know, really stuck when they got spun around. And it's one of those things that occurs. Now, in hindsight, was there really anything you could do?
I don't think so. I think it was kind of a freak accident.
Yeah, stuff just happens. And it's not, once again, it's anybody's fault. I mean, sometimes it is where it's like the kid should have been practicing in those conditions type deal. They were over stressed and under recovered, but quite frequently you're going to find is, kicking is a very explosive, dynamic lower body movement that, yeah, go figure, you do enough of them, something is probably going to give at some point. And think about professional sports, folks. What athlete is a particular elbow surgery named after for individuals that participate in throwing sports? Typically for people that pitch in baseball. Anybody know that one?
Tommy John?
Yeah, Tommy John's. And Tommy John was a great baseball pitcher who blew out his ulnar collateral ligament. And they did a surgery where they essentially took the palmaris longus tendon that's not really useful in most people, and then insert it back there, and he was able to rehab and go back to pitching. When they name a surgery after a sport or an athlete in the sport, or they name the injury after being in that athletic endeavor, it's going to be pretty straightforward and likely that, things can potentially just go wrong just due to the nature of participating in different athletic endeavors. So we're just trying to do our best to solve questions, to figure out, okay, what can we do in order to effectively keep people as safe as possible and have them perform well for as long as possible. Now, when we're talking about the different questions you're going to solve for biomechanists, one of the major issues whenever people are exposed to microgravity, and hopefully we get to, well, my personal hope is at some point humans are actually living on the moon and potentially even all the way living on Mars and throughout the rest of the solar system and beyond. Now, when you're no longer exposed to gravity, you don't have all those forces giving you that compression, giving your bones, giving your muscles reasons to be their size and strength. So effectively, they've done research with astronauts and cosmonauts. This was in the 80s and 90s, looking at how their muscle or bone mineral density and muscle mass changes. And literally, most folks lose so much muscle mass and bone mass that when they come back down to Earth, they can barely walk and move around for a number of days. Though what's funny is that right there is the treadmill that they train on. And so the treadmill itself is self-propelled. So you literally push it along. So it's like doing weighted lunges. And the other option they have up there for exercise is effectively a bicycle. And what was fascinating is I've seen the raw data, but it's never going to get published. I'm going to hit pause. So this way, this is, and back to recording. So it's important to figure out, how can we apply enough force both through our muscles and then having to be, distributed and received by our bone mass in order so we can maintain function. Then we can look at things like, okay, how do we keep people safe when they have to lift objects all day? How do we keep people safe when they want to lift heavy objects? And that's where you see things like not just using appropriate technique, but also using things like weight belts. In the picture here, that's David Riegert. If any of you guys want to have a long, boring conversations about the greatest Olympic lifter of all time, which you're going to have a hard time beating me in that debate, changing my mind because I'm a giant fan of David Riegert. And what they find is wearing these belts, if you wear them all the time, actually causes you to be weaker because you're not using your postural muscles to maintain your position. And what's even better is I'm sure you guys have seen the waist trimmers that some folks wear. And what they find is long application actually increases the size of your waist because you atrophy the muscles around it. And so you no longer have effectively the natural muscular girdle effect through the midsection. So it's kind of nuanced, but we'll get into that a little bit when we get into abdominal musculature. Now, when we're looking at things like little kids, so how kids first learn to get from the floor to standing, well, really it's from being on the ground to being able to crawl, from being able to crawl to being able to walk. And if you ever seen effectively how good a little kid's squat technique is compared to an adult, well, if you guys wanted to have the same weight ratio of effectively the weight of your head compared to the weight of your body, if we put a football helmet on you and then we put a weight on top of that football helmet, how heavy do you think that weight would have to be to mimic what it's actually like to be a toddler first learning how to stand and then walk? How heavy do you think that weight would have to be?
50 pounds.
Nice job. Actually, David, that's really close. It depends on the size of the person. So for like 130, 150 pound person, it would be a 45-pound plate strapped to their head. So if you're a bigger person, yeah, it could easily be over 50 pounds. Now imagine how perfect your posture needs to be all the time if you have a freaking 45, if not heavier weight plate strapped to your head. Like, no wonder little kids have to keep their head up, and if their head falls over, they tend to fall over because there's just so much more weight up there. So unfortunately, we don't have you guys in person, so you guys can talk about it. That's back when I was competing in strongman, maybe again. So another important thing is looking at gait. So don't be a creep, but I want you guys to try to do this a little bit, is watch and see how people walk. Like when we talk through a lot of the different motor patterns, or just the way that we use our musculature, are their feet lined up so their feet are pointing straight forward? Are they duck-billed out? Are they pigeon-toed in? Are they getting kind of an excessive waddle gait when they're moving? Do they glide well? All this gives us information on how people are moving, and are they getting their muscles to fire correctly? So is it a neurological problem? Are their muscles just weak? Is it a training problem? Or do we have some type of orthopedic restrictions? You're going to meet folks that unfortunately have lost limbs. So they're walking around on essentially a artificial lower leg, artificial total leg, and that's going to modify the way they move as well. Now, some other questions that you're going to see as far as with biomechanics is, should we stretch out before exercise? And the research is really, you want to do a dynamic warm up, but static stretching is good at the end. It actually decreases power output in the acute, but that usually is for holding the stretch for longer periods of time. And then, yes, go figure, when it comes to different pitching styles, they're harder on the elbow than others. And so it's important that we keep in mind the amount of stress we're applying to a tissue, because all of your tissues are going to repair the damage you've done to them at the best speed they can, which isn't really that fast, depending on the level of insult and injury you have. And then what can we do to optimize technique? So how can we make someone a little bit more efficient with their running stride, with their stride frequency, so they're going to be a little bit faster, given the length of their legs, the length of their thigh, the length of their shank, and the size of their foot. What's going to be the most efficient way for them to run to be able to go with the fastest speeds possible? So we've got different things you can look into as far as some interesting ways of improving equipment, so you can make folks be a little bit more, have higher performance, and then quite frequently higher safety. Obviously, recently the NFL and otherwise has realized that brain injuries aren't good for their athletes. And so trying to design a football helmet to make that a little bit less likely, which is quite the challenge to say the least. So why we use this is because this is a good framework we're going to help you guys learn how to apply, so we can watch someone do a movement, we can break it down, and then we can look for what's going to be the best way to fix the errors they're doing. We can also look at, okay, is this that effective? Is this really going to help improve performance? So when it comes to utilizing a new technique that is going to help improve performance or decrease injury risk, are we going to be able to get that well adopted? So when I grew up playing football, and I apologize, Nathan, I'm going to pick on you again. When you were taught to tackle, where do they tell you to put your head?
Just on their chest.
Same thing. Like, I grew up, you put your head right into their body. And it turns out, is that a really good long-term strategy for brain health?
No.
No. And mind you, your goal was to avoid being tackled as a running back. And so in reality, like, better coaches these days, they teaching them that you want to put your head pretty much right on the side of their hips. So you're trying to hit them with your shoulder into the hip. That's why you see kind of the rugby style tackling trying to be adopted by some of the football teams as a means to help obviously decrease those injury rates. Now, we can then think about, okay, how effective is our training methods? Are they safe? Are we going to be moving forward? So an example from my realm when it comes to strength conditioning is, how many of you guys have heard of doing really heavy negatives for training? Any of you guys have ever heard of that before?
Yes.
Okay. So Elizabeth, what is effectively doing really heavy negatives? Like, how would you program that? How's that work in a workout?
Really it's just time under tension, like isometric stuff. Just build up, I guess, muscular density.
It
Uh,
can.
yeah.
Yeah, and it can have positive effects on the neurological system, definitely some positive effects on connective tissue. The essentially in the literature, the basic approach for doing very heavy negatives is you take 105 to like even as high as 120% of your max in, say, something like the squat, and then you focus on controlling it down as slowly as possible. And then you have spotters there because it's more than your max, so you're going to eat floor, and then they help you back up, and then you can sometimes do more than one rep. Can really help increase maximal strength. Problem is your risk of injury for doing this style of training is incredibly high. As in, the research out there shows about at least 1 in 3 of the athletes that perform this type of training get hurt. Now, if you're a strength conditioning coach, how well do you think that's going to go over if 1 in 3 of your athletes are getting broken by your training?
You'll lose your job.
Yeah, there you go. Not a great choice. So now when we think about innovations with sports skill, what changes in the skill or the approach in technique can you guys think of that was truly novel, that really helped increase performance? All right, who's my jumper?
I did jumping in high school.
All right, so Emma, what do they tell you to do whenever you're high jumping? What's the positioning they tell you to do?
You have to arch your back as you're over the bar, but you have to push up first.
Yeah, do you know what that type of jumping position is called?
Just like a vertical.
Or the lean back over the bar.
Oh, the arch.
Mhm.
I don't know what other name there is.
That's okay. It was the Fosbury flop, named after, I believe, Dick Fosbury, who first invented it in
yes.
the 50s. Before that, they would always scissor kick over the high jump bar.
Yeah.
So he actually won the Olympic gold, not because he actually had the best vertical, because he had the most efficient technique to jump over. So that's probably the best example I can think of a recent sport where it really modified the way things are doing. And then finally, guys, what levels of performance we can expect depending on how mature people are, because Lord knows you don't want to introduce some very advanced techniques like throwing a curveball to an 8-year-old, things where we're going to be putting a lot of stress on tissues that aren't fully formed yet. I don't see the point in teenage powerlifting, specifically like middle school powerlifting, because you haven't even finished with puberty yet. You should probably wait until your bones are fully formed before you get crazy heavy. But anyways, that's all we're going to cover for today. You guys have yourselves a great day. Stay safe out there. I will see you in person on Thursday, and we'll get our learn on and hopefully have a great time. So stay safe. I'm going to just stay up on this Zoom link because I'm teaching again at 11 and it's the same Zoom link. So you guys go ahead and hop on out when you're ready, and then I'll try to get this uploaded to Blackboard or YouTube before the end of the day. So have a great one, guys. Bye-bye.